we're not trying to strangle China's growth, nor are we trying to change the status quo over Taiwan. It's to be postured strongly enough in the Indo-Pacific to balance China's growing power. This means ensuring none of our allies are vulnerable to sustained, successful military aggression. That means being so strong that aggression is not even considered, and that peace is preferred and preserved. This is deterrence by denial. To quote another great Republican president, we will speak softly and carry a big stick. As I said at Shangri-La earlier this year, we're not trying to strangle China's growth. We're not trying to dominate or humiliate them, nor are we trying to change the status quo over Taiwan. Our interests in the Indo-Pacific are significant, but also scoped and reasonable. This includes the ability for us, along with allies, to be postured strongly enough in the Indo-Pacific to balance China's growing power. This means ensuring none of our allies are vulnerable to sustained, successful military aggression. This is what we mean by deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. Not dominating China, but rather ensuring they do not have the ability to dominate us or our allies. It's common sense. That's why we will ensure our military can, if God forbid necessary, project sustained capabilities along the First Island chain and throughout the Indo-Pacific. That means being so strong that aggression is not even considered, and that peace is preferred and preserved. This is deterrence by denial. At the same time, we're also rapidly strengthening our nation's ability to deter and defend against cyber attacks on Department of War and dual-use targets, including through the most comprehensive overhaul of U.S. Cyber Command since it was started 15 years ago. Nor have we lost sight of the threat of global jihadism. As with narco-terrorists, working alongside our partners in the IC and other agencies, as well as partners abroad, we will continue to hunt and kill Islamist terrorists with the intent and ability to strike our homeland. All of this, of course, rests upon the power of our nation's nuclear deterrent, which is the foundation of our nation's defense. Nothing else matters if we don't get this right, and so we will. As President Trump has said, we will modernize our nation's nuclear triad. We will develop additional options to support deterrence and escalation management, and we will never allow this nation to be left vulnerable to nuclear blackmail, even in a world where we face two other major nuclear-armed powers. And we will test nuclear weapons and nuclear delivery systems on an equal basis as others. Finally, the department's activities throughout the Western Hemisphere aren't just about killing narco-terrorists, they're also about deterring and defending our nation's instance against other threats in the hemisphere. To that end, the department will always provide the president with credible options when needed. That includes guaranteeing U.S. military and commercial access to key terrain, like the Panama Canal, the Caribbean, the Gulf of America, the Arctic, and Greenland. In all instances, we stand ready to work in good faith with our neighbors, but they must do their part to defend shared interests. Where they do not, the War Department stands ready to take focused and decisive action that advances U.S. interests. This is the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, recently codified so clearly in the National Security Strategy. After years of neglect, the United States will restore U.S. military dominance in the Western Hemisphere. We will use it to protect our homeland and access to key terrain throughout the region. We will also deny adversaries' ability to position forces or other threatening capabilities in our hemisphere. Past administrations perpetuated the belief that the Monroe Doctrine had expired. They were wrong. The Monroe Doctrine is in effect, and it is stronger than ever under the Trump corollary, a common sense restoration of our power and prerogatives in this hemisphere, consistent with U.S. interests. The second line of effort for the War Department is deterrence against China, through strength, not through confrontation. Under President Trump's leadership, relations between the United States and China are better and stronger than they've been in many years. President Trump and this administration seek a stable peace, fair trade, and respectful relations with China. In November, President Trump and President Xi reached a major breakthrough in trade, putting both nations on a strong economic pathway. Reciprocal state visits in 2026 provide the opportunity for even more progress. The War Department is committed to the same approach, opening a wider range of military-to-military communications with the People's Liberation Army, aimed at deconfliction and de-escalation. We laid the groundwork for this with our counterparts months ago at ASEAN in Malaysia, and will continue that work. This line of effort is based on flexible realism, not naivete, an approach aimed not at domination, but rather at a balance of power. A balance of power that will enable all of us, all countries, to enjoy a decent peace in an Indo-Pacific where trade flows openly and fairly, where we can all prosper and all interests are respected. That's the world that we seek in the Indo-Pacific, and that is what our approach is designed to produce. We will be strong, but not unnecessarily confrontational. To quote another great Republican president, we will speak softly and carry a big stick. As I said at Shangri-La earlier this year, we're not trying to strangle China's growth. We're not trying to dominate or humiliate them, nor are we trying to change the status quo over Taiwan. Our interests in the Indo-Pacific are significant, but also scoped and reasonable. This includes the ability for us, along with allies, to be postured strongly enough in the Indo-Pacific to balance China's growing power. This means ensuring none of our allies are vulnerable to sustained, successful military aggression. This is what we mean by deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. Not dominating China, but rather ensuring they do not have the ability to dominate us or our allies. It's common sense. In this vein, our role at the Department of War is essential. It's our job to make sure Beijing sees unquestionable U.S. military strength that, if necessary, can back up our national interests. Even as we make clear our peaceful intentions, we insist that, as a Pacific nation ourselves, China respect our long-standing interests in the Indo-Pacific. And not just insist, but maintain the manifest strength to underwrite it. This involves respecting the historic military buildup they are undertaking. Our department maintains a clear-eyed appreciation of how rapid, formidable, and holistic the military buildup has been. We take these capabilities seriously. It would be silly and frankly disrespectful not to. This approach requires focus, prioritization, and clarity of purpose. That's why we will ensure our military can, if God forbid necessary, project sustained capabilities along the First Island chain and throughout the Indo-Pacific. That means being so strong that aggression is not even considered, and that peace is preferred and preserved. This is deterrence by denial. It is our job to ensure that President Trump is always able to negotiate from a position of strength in order to sustain peace in the Indo-Pacific. This is not a pivot for tomorrow. It is a reality for today. And finally, our third line of effort is increasing burden sharing with U.S. allies around the world. Here again, many self-ascribed neo-Reaganites seem to have lost the plot. According to them, only the United States has the ability to provide for defense and deterrence in Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific. According to them, if the United States doesn't do it, nobody will. In fact, according to some, America is actually better off subsidizing these allies' defenses, even if they're perfectly capable of doing more for themselves and our collective defense. That is, of course, patently ridiculous, not to mention insulting to our allies. It's actually vitally important for America's allies and partners to step up and do their part for our collective defense. This isn't just a matter of doing right by Americans who are rightfully frustrated by years of allied free-riding. This is pragmatic. As we rightly prioritize our homeland hemisphere in the Indo-Pacific, threats persist in other regions, and our allies need to step up. And step up for real. Our allies in Europe face Russia. Iran has been set back by the president and Israel's actions, but remains a threat in the Middle East. And of course, North Korea looms on the Korean Peninsula. We must also prepare for the possibility of simultaneous threats in different regions. That doesn't mean we think such simultaneous action is likely or even necessarily inevitable, but it's something the Department of War must be prepared for. And the best way to prepare for this is not by pretending we can do everything or be everywhere, effectively handing a permission slip for our allies' laggardly defense efforts. This neo-Reaganite attitude led us to fritter away our soldiers' lives, our national resources, and our citizens' support in rudderless wars. Our approach is fundamentally different and in keeping with the noble tradition of President Reagan as well as Nixon and Eisenhower. We will actually, for real, get our allies and partners to step up and do their part. We will no longer tolerate free riding. President Trump has shown the way with his historic leadership that yielded the commitments at NATO's Hague Summit. There, NATO committed to spend 5% of GDP on defense, 3.5% on core military, and 1.5% on security-related investments, and pledged to take primary responsibility for Europe's conventional defense. Things most folks sitting here just 5 years ago would have thought completely impossible. We're now using this template to press our allies around the world to meet this new global standard the president has set. And it's working. First, there was Europe and Canada. And just last month, South Korea committed to spend 3.5% of GDP on core military spending and assume the leading role in the ROC's conventional defense. We are optimistic that other Indo-Pacific allies will follow suit. In a few years, thanks to President Trump's visionary leadership, we will have our allies, which include some of the wealthiest and most productive countries in the world, once again fielding combat-credible militaries and boasting revived defense industrial industries. This will form a powerful, shared defensive shield, with well-armed allies around the world ready to defend themselves, their interests, and our collective interests. Real partnerships and alliances based on hard power, not just flags and fancy conferences based on theories and hot rhetoric. Our allies are not children. They're nations capable of doing far more for themselves than they have. And it's time they stand up, and they are. In fact, many of them are nations who have proud and powerful martial traditions of their own, and we should treat them that way. We can and should and must expect them to do their part exactly as President Trump has. Model allies that step up, like Israel, South Korea, Poland, increasingly Germany, the Baltics, and others, will receive our special favor. Allies that do not, allies that still fail to do their part for collective defense, will face consequences. President Trump, makes sense to me, likes helping countries that help themselves. And we feel the same way. That's the nature of partnerships rather than dependencies. It's what we owe our friends, and most importantly, what we owe the American people. This is a period of great consequence for our great republic. Our forefathers fought and won the Cold War, ushering in a unipolar moment during which America stood alone. It was a time of tremendous opportunity, well earned after a century marked by 2 world wars and a Cold War, always under a nuclear shadow. Well, as you know, that unipolar moment is over, and we have an opportunity to define what comes next. Under President Trump's leadership, that's exactly what we're doing. The Department of War, at the president's direction, is laser focused on advancing America first, peace through strength, common sense efforts. We're reviving the warrior ethos, we are rebuilding our great military, and every day our warriors are reestablishing the deterrence that Joe Biden so foolishly gave away. We owe safety, freedom, and prosperity to the American people, and we will deliver. We will achieve peace through strength, which is what the American people voted for and what President Trump demands. And in doing this, we appeal to Almighty God, just as our forefathers did. George Washington, the founder of the War Department, appealed to God's providence during every step of our improbable revolution. On prayer, on bended knee, on the battlefield. Ronald Reagan did the same, appealing to heaven as the world hung in the balance. We do the same today, with Jesus Christ as our guide. May he grant us the wisdom to see what is right and the courage to do it. May God bless our warriors and may God bless our great republic. Thank you.